Well done to keep it in the time. He represents the great Commonwealth of Virginia. He's also the ranking member of the full Education and Workforce, and I'm happy to recognize him for his 5 minutes. Representative Scott, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Professor Black, are there public and private charter schools?
There are all charter schools are public, but some of them are run by private entities as opposed to public or nonprofit entities. So the distinction would be those that are run by nonprofits versus those that are run by private entities. Okay.
One of the criticisms about vouchers is that if you start a voucher program, the first thing you do is fund those already in private schools. Is that right?
A very substantial portion of those programs do fund children who are already in private schools.
And if do the vouchers cover the tuition at the private school?
It does not cover the tuition of many private schools, and thus children who can't make up the difference or cannot afford to go to all private schools.
So that if you can't afford the difference, then you don't get any help. You mentioned disinvestment. Is that because of political pressure when you have vouchers and public school system, the political pressures to increase the vouchers and not so much increase the investment in public schools?
You certainly know politics far better than I, Representative, but I would say that it is my experience that vouchers are very popular in part inside of state legislative buildings, but not very popular at all outside of them.
And do the private schools get to select who their students are based on academics, better behavior, or parental involvement?
Yes.
On evidence of success, Dr. Burke mentioned the success of the DC schools, I think, in terms of academic success. I think you mentioned that when you equate for parental involvement, education level of parents, other demographics, can you say what happens to the achievement level after you've done that?
My reading of those studies is that the achievement levels are not higher in the private schools.
Say again?
My reading is that those studies, when we account for the things that you mentioned, do not demonstrate higher achievement in DC's private schools for students participating in those programs.
In civil rights, you're talking about civil rights laws. One of the problems we're experiencing today is increased segregation in public schools. Green versus New Kent County, Virginia, is from my home state, that found freedom of choice unconstitutional. Can you say what these school choice programs do to the integration or segregation of our public schools?
They do not contribute to it, and my understanding, based upon what I'm looking at, is they are perpetuating or at least facilitating additional, various forms of additional segregation and stratification in private schools, as opposed to public schools.
In terms of discipline, if the private school expels problem students or doesn't accept private students, what happens to those students?
They could raise a contract breach, but the United States Constitution does not apply to them.
So they would end up back in the public school system?
Yes.
Are private schools covered by the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act?
No.
So what happens to all the students that need those services?
They wouldn't get them. They wouldn't be legally entitled to them in a private setting.
Now, we've talked about students who are stuck in a failing school and they need choice. It seems to me the rational choice was everyone would get up and leave. The fact is that whatever choice system you have, 90% of them are going to be left behind with less resources, less political pressure. How is it a good idea to leave those 90% behind? How are they helped with a choice program?
They are not. As one study of Chicago schools aptly put it, the real privilege in America is not having to make a choice as to where to go to school.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.